Good morning. Happy time zones and welcome to Alexa Developer Office Hours. I am Amanda Lang here from the Alexa team, wishing you a happy return to work if you were off yesterday week. I know I was, but I got back in time to do office hours with all of you. So it's great to see everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm going to bring in our guests in just a second. But first of all, I want to give a quick shout out to this blog post that went up over last week. We're talking about a new partnership that we're doing with Google and Harman. This is a multi-assistant integration. So what it does is it allows customers to use Alexa and Google Assistant both from the same device. You can read a little bit more about the technical details and about what that means for developers in the blog post I just linked in the chat. So pretty cool stuff. We're really excited to announce this collaboration, and you can find out more when you click on that link. Now, without any more segue, I'm going to bring on our guest, Ed Campodonego. We're going to be talking today about a topic that has been requested from at least one of you out there in the chat, which is the Alexa Analytics dashboard. And so please be sure to bring any questions that you have to detail because we've got a lot of stuff to go over in that tab. So welcome to the stream. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks, Amanda. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing pretty good.
So let's talk a little bit about today's topic. We want to talk about how analytics can make things better for our developers and how they can use those analytics to improve their skills. And there's a whole lot of stuff in that column. But you want to just give us a brief overview of what we're doing at the analytics team and what your work is there?
Sure. So I lead the Alexa Developer Console user experience team. So a lot of the reasons why it works the way it does are because of the work my team does. But then, of course, we have technical limitations, roadmaps, everything that we have to build into as an enterprise company. I've worked with analytics since I began with Alexa 3 years ago. And one of the first things that I really started doing was building in the performance dashboards as we were launching name free interaction and beginning to dig into exactly how we represent some of those invocations. When invocations come from multiple areas, how do we actually show that information in the dashboards? And then with performance, what is it we can and can't show in a performance related dashboard based on what a skill builder is able to change themselves and what they're not able to change. So it's difficult to exactly show, is this a problem that Alexa had in understanding? Was it a natural language problem? Was it something that could be changed in the skill or not? Is the latency yours? Is the latency ours? How do we represent that information to you? And so I've now begun to own more, like way more than the analytics space. I own all of the Alexa Developer Console plus the VS Code extensions and some of how we give analytics in SMAPI as well. But um, most of my knowledge is around the dashboards themselves and how we created them.
Really cool. So I know that this dashboard has seen a lot of changes over the years since you started working on it. What's one of the most exciting features that you think is really cool currently?
Sure. I think that the more we're able to get into performance and what is happening inside of a skill, the better. And I've had ideas and ways we'd love to grow the analytics space. Internally, we'll set alarms for something when tolerance gets out of what we've set. If there are more failures or if something's occurring or an event occurs, you can set those inside of our own tools for our own application behavior. But what we haven't been able to do is set that up for skills. Like, could you set up an
Mhm.
alarm? So we created the Alexa Skills Insights program 2 years ago that would begin to get us closer to giving some of those alarms. And so if you have a smart home skill, let's say, and latency on a doorknob or a door lock is out of tolerance where it could be creating problems with the door lock or the
Mhm.
skill is timing out, we are able to share some of that as an insight that'll come out. That grew into the area of skill quality coach and giving coaching points. And I think that, of course, we can do better, but as we've continued to refine some of those insights and those coaching opportunities, we're able to give what's getting closer to allowing skill builders to create those alarm states. So I think we've got the foundations in place as we're able to continue working in that space.
Oh, very, very cool. It's always good to have more information about how things are performing for folks. It looks like we've already got some questions in the chat too. Do you
Great.
want to take that question, or do you want to go ahead and show the dashboard, and we'll talk through some of the features in that dashboard?
Sure. Let me bring up an example here. And I don't have a live skill that we'll be
Hmm.
able to look at directly, but maybe we can fumble through setting things up. Let me find the screen share again. But could you help me find the question while I get
Yeah, sure.
this
I'm going to read
share
this out
going here?
loud. From Twitch, Brian Tarbox wants to know. My main question is just understanding what the values mean, with particular emphasis on friction and unhandled events or unhandled intents. Because unhandled intents is giving him some confusion because it says list resolves intents, which means handled, but they're listed as unhandled. So we could talk a little bit about what the unhandled intents tab is showing. Are we on that tab now?
I am on the intent tab, and
Mm-hmm.
I understand the concern as well. So maybe something else to do. We do a process we call walk the store.
Mm-hmm.
Walk the store is essentially comes from brick and mortar days where you would walk through your store and find opportunities to improve the store. If something's dirty or misaligned, or you need to move product around because customers can't find it. In the digital space, the same concept. We will walk through specific areas and find opportunities to do improvements. It's outside of the QA process, it's outside of user testing. But we did a walk the store for the analytics space, and it took us 5 hours. So we had expected to do it in maybe 1 or 2 sessions. It took us 5 1-hour sessions to actually get through all of the dashboards. There's a
Wow.
lot of information in here, a lot of content. And something that we had identified is some of the descriptions are either out of date or confusing. So, absolutely. Brian, send me all direct feedback you might have on things that have confused you and that weren't clear, and I will get them into the list if we didn't already add them. For some of the specific things you called out here, unhandled requests, failed utterances. Hopefully, those hovers show up here. So,
Yeah.
failed utterances per intent, total utterances which failed per intent type, right? Like the description is actually reusing the same content. So, it's not giving you something new. Failed utterances are utterances that failed. Great, thanks. What can I do with that? So I
Right.
hear the criticism, and I have already begun trying to get some of these pieces of information better updated.
What's the best way for folks to reach you directly if they have console feedback?
Sure, I'm on all, I think, all of the Slack spaces that we have externally, on the
Oh,
champion Slack
yep.
space, on the Alexa community, and on the Alexa space itself. You can also email me, and I'm happy to add my email address in when it's appropriate.
Sure. This is our Slack. If you're not on the Slack, you can DM him directly, and we can find you there, right?
Yep, I am there.
Great, great. That's probably a great way for most people to reach anybody from our team if we happen to be on the Slack. So don't most I think most people in chat have already joined the Slack, but yeah, if you're on the Slack, yeah, send us a message on the Slack. We'll chat about it there. Um, so we're looking at now is failed intents just says percentage distribution of all intents overall failed utterances. So
Right. And so failures per intent or overall failed intents. So did the intent itself fail, or did the utterance not hit the correct intent? I think is a lot of the distinction that we're trying to pull out there.
mhm,
Um, and you're able to dig into specific ones. This is a
mhm,
very limited skill. I don't have a lot of intents in here, but even
mhm,
still, there are 3 pages of the intent showing here. It looks like really two. So
yeah. I heard you testing this skill earlier. Can you describe what the skill does and what your intents are?
yes, so I work out in martial arts, boxing, and
Cool.
I've been a martial artist for a really long time. And working out with a boxing timer, I usually have a physical boxing timer that will set rounds. You can set count of rounds. rest period between rounds, and round length. And it's hard to set up a timer that will do that just by setting up timers anywhere unless the timer is specifically built for those types of intervals. And those intervals can be used elsewhere as well. But if you think of number of times you wish this to repeat, the
Hmm.
length of the time it runs, and then what happens at the end of each one of those time intervals. Is there a rest period or no rest period? And so I had started to set up a timer intent, essentially, that's a boxing timer. And again, this isn't a live skill, and I'm a little out of date in working on
Hmm.
it. I've tried to create this a couple different times, but the purpose of this skill was just to set those rounds to allow me to do that interval training
Hmm.
um, in the garage.
Cool. So it's something that you get some use out of at home,
Exactly.
and you've got different intents for setting round length and setting rounds and timing.
Yeah, I think there may have been a more efficient way to do it. And if I had
Hmm.
a computer science background, it probably would have come much simpler for me. But getting through those individual settings, I ended up needing to create intents for changing each individual value and
Hmm.
trying to give all of them at once, set 5 rounds of 3 minutes with a 30-second break, and then getting each one of those slots to go into each one of the values, and then actually having the timer perform that way. It's taking me longer than it would probably take somebody who does this all the time.
Yeah. And it's cool though because it shows that anybody can really put together an Alexa skill to make their life easier for whatever their needs are. It doesn't have to necessarily be you don't have to necessarily have a deep computer science background to make one of these. It's really nice actually. Um,
Absolutely.
so the other question here is again from Brian Tarbox. The retention
Mhm.
tab confuses me. Can we take a look at the retention tab? It's the one right under where you're at now. You don't have any
Absolutely.
metrics,
Yeah,
but
I
you're not because it's not a live skill. But he says it seems to say that the skill has low retention, but he still gets tons of engagement. So can you talk about what the retention tab is actually measuring here?
sure. Retention is how a person returns to that skill, how an individual customer or account returns to that skill over time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that concept of not just a single use and that person doesn't come back, but that same person using your skill over and over again.
Oh, so retention is about repeat customers.
Correct.
So if a skill was said to have low retention, does that just mean that a lot of new people are finding the skill?
If the traffic is high on this skill and retention is low, then yes, it's a lot of new people or first time users that would be coming in. And so that concept of, are you keeping people in as repeat users? Do
Mm-hmm.
they come back for more information tomorrow, next week? Or it's also possible that they may return, but it's outside of the general timeline. And I think, see, for 5 weeks of retention. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure if someone uses your skill once a month and it's not just within that 5 week period, it's
Oh, yeah.
possible that that retention doesn't count. But so if your information isn't updated really frequently and there isn't a draw for that person, then maybe they fall outside of the retention window of measuring it over 5 weeks.
Can I return to the question about friction? Which tab is that in?
Customer friction.
It's a little further down, maybe.
Performance. Yeah, and again, I'm not pulling in all of
Right.
the information. So I think that we measure friction inside the performance area. If anybody has it in live skills, it might be easier to see.
Yeah, let us know what tab that friction message is in. Because there's a lot of information back here, for sure. Um, and he also adds a metric I want to add is how much time is the skill open. Tell me how engaged the customer is, and the longer it is open, the more they're presumably getting from it. Do we
Sure.
track anything like that today?
I don't know that the dashboards show that very clearly. We do look at it, and I think it's another important metric to share. I think it's what we consider session time, is what we
Mm-hmm.
would call it internally, or what I've used in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been really, really surprised in some of the session times for some media skills. for some of Viacom's skills, they have session times that are measured in hours,
Right.
where someone might be watching comedy skits through Comedy Central for 3 hours at a time. And it was a use of the skill that I like. It was confusing to me. I didn't realize that anybody would actually do that. It's not how I use skills mostly. And I may have 2, 3, 4 hour sessions of music playing,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never watched video on my skill for more
Frequently
than,
watch video.
or on a device for more than a few minutes at a time.
Right.
So I do think that's really important, and I think good to know. You can see how many intents an individual customer is hitting, but you can't necessarily see how often that individual session is, like, for all of that time. So we can see total sessions, average sessions, successful end, but the duration of that section is not, or session is not really shown.
Yeah, he says he created that metric for his skill because he was curious about duration. So what is actually being shown here? It's activations and how many average sessions per customer.
Correct. So the total number of sessions for
Mm-hmm.
this skill, today I invoked this skill for the first time in a couple months. So there's been really one session. I actually invoked it twice. Only
Mm-hmm.
one of them showing up at the moment. But when I was testing before, there were multiple numbers of sessions that were happening in there, and average sessions per customer. I was the only person testing this, so
You're the
what we're
customer.
seeing here is that
Mm-hmm.
37 sessions I did in that range. The type of session, so these are successful sessions, incomplete sessions, and failed sessions is really what we're
Interesting.
showing in this. So where the user didn't respond. So I guess there were no instances of me not responding, but there were a few failures as I was testing the intents and trying to set up the utterances and the responses through those. And then not being able to capture all of the utterances that I wanted to map directly to the right intents. And then successful ends. So if there's a failure in the session and it gets dumped out, then it would be measured here. So all of these sessions succeeded, or I ended them. So
The
it's a great,
skill ended. Yeah.
yeah. So the skill itself ended, and yeah, I guess I would have expected that times that I exited the skill would have been called user end, but
Hmm.
um, so I'll actually have
Maybe
to
that's a
dig
little
into
bit
that a little
different.
more.
Yeah, so you're actually keeping track of the session length, maybe just not surfacing it yet on the dashboard. Is that right?
So the
Or,
session length, I don't believe
mhm,
is being tracked here at all.
mhm,
So it's
mhm.
something that exists in the data, but isn't being represented into a dashboard.
Okay, and that's good feedback. Maybe something that would be really useful, especially for folks that do rich media type skills and want to know like how long the user is engaged with that particular thing.
Mm, absolutely. And even if it's just an information skill, or
Hmm.
users coming in and getting one piece of information, like football scores, is somebody coming in and just getting the score for one match and then leaving, or are they digging in? Are they pulling a lot of information? Are they staying engaged and using that skill for more than just one question?
So we took a look at the sessions, and I think we took a look at the retention data. But is there any more cool info in that custom dashboard area that we haven't looked at? We take a look at the intents and utterances tabs.
Yeah, and again, maybe not again, but
Uh-huh.
the custom section
Hmm.
is for custom skills. So
Right.
it does get a little bit confusing. We've had challenges trying to integrate things where smart home skill may have a customers set as well. So I can look at number of customers, unique customers in this skill counts up to one each time,
Hmm.
and for me. But
Right.
that customers tab, or the correction, a customer's dashboard shows up in smart home as well. So if this was a multi-capability skill and I had smart home added into this skill, there would be a smart home section here with the smart home dashboards. Customers that hit the smart home um, intents show up in the smart home section, but people who hit the custom intents section. So I would love to integrate those, but there was a data incompatibility at one point,
Mm.
and we couldn't easily integrate them, and we wanted to show them uniquely. We've had a program on the backlog for a couple years to try to completely overhaul this. We use high charts as the JavaScript framework for displaying this, and we were looking at upgrading to something that was a little bit more customizable, and we could integrate things a little bit more. But the ability to combine some of that is something that I've been hoping to do for a while. And I've
Very
lost
good.
focus of the question. What was the question
No.
again?
Oh, we're just going off. But there's lots of questions. I was talking about what was in the left hand bar at the time.
Oh,
So
sure.
yeah. So.
Yeah. So there are a lot of individual pieces of information that'll be broken out in different ways. So we can see the average number of utterances
Hmm.
and responses. So sometimes it would be good. I've wanted to integrate some of these over the top of each other so you could
Hmm.
see how
Yeah.
individual things interact and how that works. Luckily, most of this data can be exported. So if you see the information you want, you can pull it out or pull it directly through the analytics APIs and then work with it yourself, which I don't want to use that as a workaround for us not having dashboard data that you would want as a skill builder. But there are ways to pull that information and look at it in other ways.
It's that little download button on the right there.
Yeah, and so this would export the information in the chart itself, and so I could
Hmm.
print the chart if I really wanted to. I don't know the value in a lot of that, but
The CSV
um,
is useful.
exactly. So if you wanted to pull this down as a CSV, then
Mm.
you can. And right now I'm looking at a fairly large range from March.
And getting a ping would be useful if you were doing, like, say, a marketing demonstration and you wanted to show people how the skill was performing and stuff like that. So that's also
Absolutely.
useful to have too. Um, so next question. I disagree with the results in distribution by device. I create CW metrics for APL or not, and I'm seeing about 75% of my traffic is for a device with screens. The distribution shows a reverse. I think we were talking a little bit about that before we went live. So could you speak to the device discrepancy, distribution by device?
Sure. I'm trying to remember which dashboard. Is it
Probably
distribution
distribution. Yeah,
shows
there we go.
by device? All right. So yeah, I'm using an 8-inch Echo Show on my
Mm-hmm.
desk right now.
Mm-hmm.
Curious what the other is. Oh, I'm probably testing in the simulator
Right.
as well. So
I'm assuming that dev tab.
the not knowing exactly which devices are showing up for you, I think that not all devices are clearly identified. The other, like the utterances by device, can be broken up in different ways. We also don't do a good job of tracking the touch events inside of the like from APL. We don't show them well if we show them at all. Sometimes certain events will show up in customer, but they won't show up in utterance because it's not an utterance. Utterance is spoken command.
Mm-hmm.
So having that information show up, and I know that Brian, you had said something in one of the Slack spaces a month or so ago about not being able to see some of those touch events, and I think it's another item that's been on our backlog for a while is getting more of that touch event in. So I think that the count sometimes gets weird based on how they're attributed. The same thing happens with the invocations areas. Like we've broken out a lot of the invocations into specific types of invocation, but then there are invocations that don't always show up. And it was hard to do a complete stack of all of the invocations. And because it's all direct from development, the invocations aren't showing up here for me.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing how they're laid out doesn't always seem to add up, and a lot of it has to do with the type of invocation and how they're counted it's just not always clean information, and we've been trying to get that corrected for a while as well. So I don't think that any of it's wrong. It just doesn't always count everything, and so I think there is traffic that occurs that doesn't always show up here.
And sometimes that might show up under like the other devices tab because they're using a car or something to interact with it, and it wouldn't show up necessarily as one of our
Yeah, I
devices.
think the things like Echo Buds or Alexa embedded into other random
Mm-hmm.
items will often do that. Like my television,
Oh
if
yeah,
for whatever
TVs.
reason, yeah, if your skill was invoked, like I invoke the LG skill all the
Mm-hmm.
time, but
Mm-hmm.
um, things like that.
So the TVs don't show up under that tab as TVs; they just show up as other most of the time.
I think they do because they're
Mm.
not
Okay.
specifically laid out. I guess I could try running my skill on the TV and see what
On the
happens.
TV
But
and see where it shows up. Yeah, it's a little bit different, right? Because
those
they wouldn't be flagged as
distribution,
an echo. So that might
correct,
be where some of those screen stats are coming from as well. Is that they're screen devices that aren't necessarily flagged in the system, and there's quite a few potentially
correct.
out there of those. Mm-hmm. So down under your invocations, what can you describe a little bit of the difference between direct versus one-shot invocations in the dashboard?
Sure. So direct invocations are the invocations where you call the skill specifically, where you
Mm-hmm.
tell the skill device open this.
Mm-hmm.
One-shot invocations are the invocations where you're actually asking for an intent
Mm-hmm.
when you invoke the skill.
Okay.
So device open this skill and do this thing.
Oh, okay.
And
Difference between asking ask such and such for the weather versus open such and such and then going to the next thing.
exactly. Yeah.
I got
If
it.
it, if I use Big Sky as an example, open Big
Mm-hmm.
Sky, or open Big Sky and ask me, or and tell me the humidity. Then one shot straight into that. What's the humidity intent?
Mm-hmm.
For name free invocation, at that point, it would be asking without the skill name in place. So if NFI is enabled in the skill, it would allow the opportunity for you to ask for an answer that the skill gives, but it isn't a direct invocation where you ask the skill by name. So if I ask, what's the humidity? And the big
Mm-hmm.
sky is invoked to answer that question,
Mm-hmm.
at that point, it wouldn't be ask big sky to tell me the humidity, which would be one shot, and just what's the humidity would it would be an NFI interaction.
Yeah. Not all skills have that functionality available, but those
Correct.
that do, it's
And
it's
it's
useful to
yeah,
have.
it's a
Mm-hmm.
performance item as well. So not all skills are eligible for it, and
Mm-hmm.
the criteria are similar to earning the again the skill quality coach. This skill won't qualify, but
Right. Right.
like you must have a certain quality level within the skill in order to qualify for name free interaction.
Got it. Yeah. That's how they determine the availability there with just a part of
There
it.
are other factors, but mostly it's in that skill quality score.
Cool. I don't think we've talked very much about the performance tab. Do you want to go down that line there and talk a little bit about what's happening there?
Um, so performance summary, um, it's going to show a few pieces of
Mm-hmm.
information specific to how the skill is performing on the information that we're showing here. So
Mm-hmm.
overall intent confidence, these will just end up linking down to the other dashboards as well. So uh, how what's the
Right.
confidence on the ability to map that utterance to an intent, the latency at the endpoint, so for how well my skill is performing. So it looks like latency is on the rise, but P90 latency, half a second for this skill sounds kind of slow, but I don't know what I could do to make it go faster at the
Yeah.
moment, honestly. And then 97% response, successful response rate in this skill. And then we can look deeper into those pieces of
Mm-hmm.
information over time. So you could see broken down by low, medium, high confidence for intent confidence, the latency over time. Where has latency been? And if I were to zoom in here, it'd probably show a little bit more. But I guess this day I was testing, things were a little bit slower. So almost a second latency there for the P90 latency. And the responses, successful and failed responses. Something that was called out during our walk the store was also the colors chosen for these individual items shouldn't fail to be red or, um,
Probably, yeah.
and it probably should be. I think that some of the dashboards were set up with just random assignments of colors
Hmm.
for the individual items that show up, and then others we set up specifically like
Right.
these were set up to show a range of low confidence being red, high confidence being green. And so that was something else that we'd identified to kind of clean up, is keeping a consistency to the coloring, if you will.
Right. So if I'm a developer and I see that my intent confidence is sort of on the low side, are there changes I can make to my skill to help out with that, or is that more on us, or more on us?
I So I believe that the majority of it will be able to be corrected by the skill builder. If
Hmm.
there's low confidence hitting your utterance, or correction, hitting your intent,
Hmm.
it's probably because that utterance isn't being handled well, or like using the boxing timer specifically,
Hmm.
asking for round length, round count, round rest. Like there were pieces in there that I was really needing to kind of break apart and figure out, all right, how do I exactly ask for this so that it goes to the right intent and the information doesn't either fail or go to the wrong intent. So I think there are times where the context becomes difficult to break apart, but for the most part, I feel it's on me
Hmm.
to be able to do that.
So if I'm not getting a lot of confidence, the best thing to maybe do is go and add more sample utterances for my intents and see if I can retrain the model to accept more utterances.
I think so.
Hmm.
And I went through, if I were to pop over to the intents here and kind of look at the utterances, I had to think of them in different ways.
Hmm.
Um, and I had the idea the other day, oh, why don't I, maybe I could jump into Chat GPT and put these in and see what can it think of, like how, how else might I look at these and keep them unique and distinct?
How many different ways can ChatGPT come up with? It probably can come up with quite a few. It's good at coming up with variants.
Absolutely, it is really good at the language side of things in
Mhm.
that space.
Uh, Next question. In estimated system errors, what does percentile mean?
Okay.
That's a
Um,
tough one.
yeah, percentile was it is a very difficult one, and it's not how I originally wanted to display that information. I didn't want to use percentile, but essentially what's happening there is, imagine that there's a list of 100 items, and those 100 items, the most used utterance or the most frequent utterance is at the top of that list. So I don't think I can actually, like, I'm not getting any of those showing up in my performance area. So I don't think there's any of the frequently uttered data that's showing up here for me. But trying to remember which direction it goes. That number, or so number 100 is the most used item, and then number one is the least used item, but we're not giving a count of instances of that. So the most uttered item is number 100, and if it's low confidence, or if there are failures associated with it, then that's probably one of the ones that you would want to work on. So we were talking the other day about resorting that list by putting failures on top instead of listing it out
Hmm.
from 100 to 1, so that it was clearer what it is that's failing, and then stack ranking them based on how likely one is to need to be updated than another.
Yeah, so maybe there's another way to display that information that might make it easier in the future too.
Absolutely.
Uh, Hello, hello from Data Voice. Hello. Uh, Robert Tables. Anytime I get stumped at work as a large language model, and then I trail off and start googling as a large language model.
Mm.
There we go. That's the all round excuse. Give it has to think about it for a second. Do you ever watch GPT when you give it a question and then it has to like think about it and then it's like slow and then it starts typing stuff out as it's
Yeah,
thinking it
it
through?
gets kind
Yeah.
of annoying having to watch it type everything out. I'm like, come on, just dump it as a screen. Is it? I'm actually curious. Is it thinking it out like that, or is that how it's operating? Or
It recursively processes its own output. So yeah,
okay,
that's what they generally do. So it probably does have to actually look and see and make sure that its output makes sense versus like splattering it all on the screen at once.
right. And so maybe start your prompt with without needing to start everything with I'm just a large language model, and without repeating exactly what I say each time, answer
Well,
this question.
a
Yeah.
good tip for developers who are using it to generate something. I don't talk about tips for GPT very often, but it's something that's pretty cool. If you are using it to generate like JSON, for example, you've got to be sure it doesn't prelude that with "Here's that answer in JSON" because you don't want that little snippet like, without any preamble. Just
Yes.
JSON. Please tell me the JSON. Otherwise, it'll say, "Okay, here's your answer," and then it'll give you the info because it's just so friendly like that. Sometimes you don't want it to be friendly. Also, in friction, what does baseline mean? What's baseline friction?
Um, Great question. Don't think do I have friction. So trying to remember. I think the friction
Mm-hmm.
dashboard. I don't
It
remember
might
what
be in a
all we
different
show
spot.
on the
Yeah.
dashboard. Yeah. Um, so baseline is probably coming in with a few different pieces of information based on the skill type and overall what we see, like with latency in that skill type or with failed utterances in that skill type, and then using that as kind of the benchmark for where we will begin measuring a positive or negative change over what that baseline is. So there are a few pieces of information that are built into creating that baseline, and then we kind of show it as how your skills are performing against what that average is in that category.
So how do we measure friction overall?
Overall friction is a combinations of things, and like one of the concepts that we speak about internally is customer perceived defect rate, CPDR is what we
Mm-hmm.
call it,
Mm-hmm.
and it is measuring a few different pieces, but it's sentiment, it's voice tone that we'll often use ourselves. When somebody says "Shut up, Alexa," like that means something different than
Right.
"Alexa, stop." For the other pieces, like where there are bargains, bargains will also matter. But for some
Mm-hmm.
skills,
Mm-hmm.
bargain is almost desirable.
Right.
And so, one of the issues that we've had over time in creating the performance dashboard is showing exactly what would be important to you and your
Mm-hmm.
skills and how you want your skills to behave
Mm-hmm.
and how you want your customers to interact with it. And maybe if it's a trivia game and you want to answer first, right? Jeopardy, you hit the buzzer before the
Right.
question's even finished because that's the only way you're going to get millions of dollars on Jeopardy. And so that bargain where you might be interrupting the Jeopardy skill to give an answer is desirable. And so if we counted that as negative, it doesn't actually mean it's negative. But so we'll pull a few of those pieces of information in to kind of talk about what that overall perceived defect rate might be in the
Mm-hmm.
skill and how a
Mm-hmm.
customer is interacting with your skill for positive or negative sentiments.
So a bargain is when I interrupt it, essentially.
Correct. Yes. So if
And sometimes those are frustrated, like, no, 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 stop. I meant to do this other thing. And other times it's like an excited, like, really, yeah.
exactly. And I think the overall concept and probably the 80, maybe even 90+% case is that a bargain is not desirable. You don't
Mm-hmm.
want
Mm-hmm.
your skill to be interrupted, but if it's rambling, if the answer it's giving isn't the answer that was requested,
Right.
then that bargain is when somebody interrupts it to get what they want.
Yeah, and like for example, maybe if it's running an ad or something, and you're like, no, no, start over. Don't ramble about the sales pitch. Just tell me what I need to do or whatever. I've definitely done that. It's a great
Totally.
chat. It's a great explanation. Thank you. You are smart.
Right.
If you have sentiment analysis, then can we surface that to our developers?
I am not sure that it's actually exposed anywhere to be able to share, but it's something that we can take back and look at because it. I think it's probably at times more important than just was there a barge in, was there a failed intent,
Mm-hmm.
but that experiential information is super helpful, and you don't get a lot of that. Like there isn't, there may be those quantitative measures and we just tell you numbers, but there isn't a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that qualitative,
Right.
how is somebody actually enjoying your skill, what is it that they're doing, did they sound happy or not.
Mm.
And I think that one of the other reasons we don't expose it a lot, and even internally, it's difficult to use because it's not always correct.
Sure.
Um, we can guess, and I think it's if you were to consider high confidence and low confidence metrics, it's a lower confidence metric to actually understand if someone was happy or not. Clear
Mm-hmm.
signals. Was someone cursing at the device? All right,
Mm-hmm.
probably not so happy with it, but
Right. Right. Did somebody call it a name or something like that?
exactly.
They probably are not so happy with it. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yes.
Is it? I don't know if it's possible for developers to respond to that data though. Like if they find out if they get a negative sentiment.
I think there are ways you can. If you know that customers are actually showing frustration at certain intents, maybe they're asking for something else and that intent is surfacing instead, so it's not the correct intent. Um, if
Mm-hmm.
there are, I think opportunities to improve the overall performance of their skill and give the information that the customer wants. Again, multiple types of skills. They do so
Right.
many different
Right.
things. Like everybody connected here probably makes different types of skills.
For sure.
And having that knowledge of what it is your customers want to do, what are their goals, how can you help them meet those goals? That only comes through direct interactions with those customers. So reading your reviews, understanding the information that they give you. I know that some skill builders have built in feedback mechanisms in
Right.
their skill, and being able to say, report a problem, and it gives a log in piece
Mm-hmm.
of like it will log that session information. So I know that Steve Arkanovic has some things. I've contacted him a couple times when his skill has done strange things, and he's given me specific utterances to give that skill, and then it gives me some debug information, and I've sent him the debug information. So the more you can interact with your customers and
Mm-hmm.
meet their needs, I think you always have that opportunity to lower that friction overall and
Right.
to improve the experience on the whole.
Cool. Yeah, I think a lot of people out there have come up with some other custom analytics solutions as well, maybe if they need more data or information, but it's always good that we've got this data that's available for folks and then they can see what's happening with their skills and how it's working out. Robert Table says, I'd love a skill that can clap back in Sam Jackson's voice. We used to have Sam Jackson voice on the platform. I think we don't have that option anymore. But I think that there's also some cool new skins and stuff. Like my Alexa downstairs is still using the Barbie skin because makes lots of chimes and fun things when you ask it for a timer. But
Nice.
we periodically cycle out stuff like that and update those. So we do. I'm sure you could get. I'm sure you could probably. There's lots of ways to get an impersonator to record different voices because you can customize your voices. So, is there anything else cool that we should talk about that we haven't talked about yet on this dashboard? We've got about 15 minutes left
Yeah, I would
before
love to
I've got to
show
go.
more on the skill quality coach,
Yeah, let's
but
talk a little bit. You don't have
yeah, I
that on
don't
yours, but
have.
let's talk about it.
Sure. So, skill quality coach, the concept behind it is that we will be able to find opportunities for you to improve your skill based on a large set of things that we see as helping skills perform better. So we've you know, there are tons of skills out there in the world, and we can look at those skills that are performing the best, that have the greatest retention, who maybe have the most sessions in a day or whatever, and we can start to look at what are the factors in those skills that make them so successful.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's that it delivers a content that nobody else can give, right? Like you would have a difficult time making a news oriented skill unless you had direct access to some news
Right.
content.
Right.
So, but what else is happening in those skills? And so the skill quality coach, the concept behind it is we will measure the quality overall in this skill, giving a ton of factors that some of which we've shared, some of which we have not shared, that look at how well your skill is being adopted by customers, how it's performing overall. And then we could see, like, is your skill in a category where customers would actually benefit from having uh, like an account link? So
Hmm.
something like
Hmm.
Spotify totally makes
Hmm.
sense to account link Spotify skill and Spotify account. Great.
Right.
But other skills, it may not make sense at all
Yeah.
to do it. So we can't just give a blanket, oh, skills that have account linking perform well, so you should do account linking. If it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to your skill, why would we give like a
Right.
suggestion to you to do it? And we probably get this wrong in some places because we're still dialing in the exact pieces of information that we would use to deliver a suggestion like consider account linking. But others are really simple to give. Your skill doesn't have a visual layer. Consider adding a visual layer to your skill for screen based devices. That
Hmm.
just makes sense, right? Like, how can you update your skill to go and and give better visuals because
Hmm.
there isn't anything in that skill. And so, giving some of those coaching suggestions to help improve the skill, and then like an SQS of 4.7 is a pretty good score. The score goes from 0 to 5, and
That's really high. Yeah.
being able to get to a 5 means that your skill is performing well. Latency is low. Customer perceived defect rate is low. You have good retention. You have a good amount of customers who are coming and using it. So the amount of information that we're collecting on the skill use gives us higher confidence that your skill is doing good things and not necessarily nefarious things or poor experience things. So that score starts to raise over time, and we'll give you these suggestions in ways that you would improve that quality score.
And do I need a certain amount of users before I start seeing SQS recommendations?
Yes, I forget where the number is. It's 25 users in
Hmm.
a month. So monthly active user count needs to be around 25 individual use customers, let's say
Hmm.
customers, because it'll be measured not just if two people within one household on the same account are using it, but it, think of it as accounts or different customer
Okay.
accounts.
Got it. Cool. That's not that hard of a bar to reach though. For most developers, if you've got a few people using it, you can start to see that SQS.
I think so. It's a fairly low number to begin earning, if you
Hmm.
will, to get that minimum score. But as far as the coaching opportunities go,
Hmm.
there will
Hmm.
be other coaching that happens. There's Alexa Skills Insights. There are email messages that give some of those insights. I
Hmm.
think we've built more metrics-based insights on the smart home side, so those are probably a little bit more
Yeah.
beneficial in what I think of as quick insight. Latency on this skill is slow.
Yeah, I was noticing you said on the bar on the left here where it says custom. If that's smart home, you'll see another thing there that says smart home, and you'll have more smart home
Correct.
data.
Yeah. If I were to go into a skill with multi MCS multi capability skill. So this one has another test skill. I'm sure we all have hundreds of them.
Of course.
So here, smart home shows up as a
Oh,
section in
separate section.
correct. Yeah,
No,
so the
it does
custom
depend on the connection.
intents and then the smart home intent.
Cool.
So this customers would
Hmm.
be showing the customers who are hitting the smart home based portions of the skill.
And it's multiple. So like my husband and I both use the device. We would register as two customers because we have different accounts.
If they're
Or
different
no?
accounts,
Yes.
yes. If they're the same account, and just two different profiles, like it
Oh,
recognizes
okay.
you as Amanda and it recognizes your husband by name,
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
may not count. I don't think it will count as two different people in that skill, but
Miss Farnham.
um, personalization may, I think this may just be permission based. I'm not positive if personalization section will actually show
Oh,
the
okay.
different profiles hitting that one account if
Mm-hmm.
multiple people are doing it. But there are cases where it could be valuable. So if we consider Spotify, if you
Mm-hmm.
have your Spotify music and your husband has his Spotify music,
Right.
you may both Spotify may want to serve you both differently. When you ask for your favorite songs, they may be different.
Yeah, I definitely would be different.
Right.
um, yeah, or just tell everyone in your Discord to start using your skill. That'll solve it. Yeah, there we go. If you've got a friend group, let everybody try out your skill. Well, I think we're almost at time. Before we go, how do we? Slack is one way to get a hold of you. Is there any other good way to get a hold of you with feedback or comments?
Sure. Feel free to email me directly as well. Ed Camp at email or at Amazon.com is another
Okay,
good
I'll
way
put that
to
in
get a
the
hold of me.
chat. Edcamp at Amazon.com. Very easy to remember. Yeah, if you've got questions for Ed about the dashboard or feedback, we do, as you said, walk the store periodically, and I've been on some of those sessions, listening into not just for analytics but also for like the developer console as well, because there's all kinds of little, there's so much stuff, there's so much information. It's actually really really dense, and sometimes I think we need to take a step back and be like, do we have redundant information? Is there more that we could be surfacing? Is there something we're missing here? All those good things that we like to see are just, like you said, the colors might be confusing. I don't know. There's just a lot to think about. So all feedback is very, very, very good for us.
Yes,
Any info
please.
on fall events? All I've got for you is that we do have our devices event coming up on September 20th. That's about all I can say right now. But that's the date. So save your day, save your calendar. And that's going to be our fall event. So, Ed, thanks so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate you coming in and just exposing your screen to everyone and your personal skills so we could see a little bit of info. But if anybody has direct questions for you about analytics, I know we've got some passionate folks out there who are making their own analytics, who are using it to improve their skills. It's a real pleasure to see what developers come up with and people pushing things to the limit as well.
Wonderful. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks. So we will see you all next week, same time and channel. Talk to you then.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda.